Welcome into This Week in Hockey East. We have a lot to talk about, including men's Beanpot, this week's key matchups, and a women's team with a chance to clinch first place in the standings this week. I'm Bridgette Proulx here with Eric Gallanty. Let's start with the men's Beanpot semifinal matchups, Eric, and who's going to be facing off in the championship game next Monday?
Yeah, let's start with Boston College, right? They play that first game against Harvard. The Eagles are a winner. BU in a shootout takes down Northeastern, so we'll have a battle of ComAv in the final. I think when you look back at the Boston College game against Harvard, it can kind of be a little bit deceiving because BC had a 3-0 lead in the first period. They had a ton of shots. They end up with 37 shots over the first two periods. But it's not like Harvard didn't push, right? Harvard had 18 shots of their own in the first period. So it was actually really impressive that BC came out of the first the way they did. They even said at postgame it didn't feel like a 3-0 period. It was that second period that they kind of pulled away. BC's had to do it a little bit shorthanded here recently. Teddy Stiga didn't play again on Monday. He and Conmee were both out on Friday. And I think this is one of the stories of the year, Bridgette, right? We'll talk about it with Andre Gasson in a minute. He was out for a lot of the first half. Jelvik's been out since November. There's been guys going in and out. And yet they've been able to sustain their offense all the way through it. They scored 3 goals in 11 straight games and 15 of their last 16. Remember last year when Oscar Jelvik went out right around this time, right around Beanpot, the offense was never quite the same. It really hurt. So as good as you had, Leonard and Higgins and Proulx up front, once Jelvik went out of that top 6, they never found the right combinations. It just never really gelled. This year, it actually feels like they're a little bit deeper up front. They've been able to sustain some of these injuries. They've been able to find some good combinations, and it's allowed them to continue to be as good offensively as they have all the way through this stretch. Greg Brown called it kind of like the beginning of the season all over again with all these new guys coming back and Gasson and Hemming and so on and so forth. But now, Bridgette, it feels like they found some combinations that have really been successful.
Yeah, that line of James Higgins, Andre Gasson, and Oscar Hemming has been really impressive since they were put together. It has a combination of Higgins' speed and IQ and 2 bigger guys that kind of think the game the same way. And the chemistry is already forming. You can see it despite them just being together for 4 games. It was really on display in this Beanpot semifinal game. They factored into BC's 5-1 win, each of them with a multi-point game. Oscar Hemming, who was added midseason, like we talked about, assisted on both the James Higgins goals. So did Andre Gasson. And he's now been on a point streak since he's come back from his injury. In all 6 games since returning from missing 2.5 months, he's had points in each game, totaling 9 points so far in this half of the year. And James Higgins nearly had the hat trick. He had 2 goals in that game against Harvard and assisted on Dean Letourneau's. First looked like maybe it was a hat trick, but Letourneau got a piece of it. So James Higgins is our Service Credit Union scoring leader, taking a look at the goals that he had in this game. And Greg Brown talked to us this week about the way that Higgins has played as of late. He said he's been getting points the whole season, but I agree he's more impactful of late. Maybe his decisions are a little bit better or a little bit quicker. And in total, Bruins prospects really showed up in the Beanpot semifinal. They accounted for 4 goals, 5 assists, and 9 points.
And I think some of what you're seeing in those clips, Bridgette, is Hemming specifically setting up some of those Higgins goals. And I think this is a really important point because one of the things that we've talked a lot about with James Higgins is how he's thinking the game at an NHL level right now, where his hockey IQ is. And someone the level of prospect of Hemming, even at 17 years old, I think can match him in terms of how he's thinking the game, where his hockey IQ is. And I think that's really important for why Higgins and why Hemming have been thriving coming in. I think the other thing, though, that we just need to at least note is that Luca Cloutier in goal is playing his best of the entire season right now. Over this 4-game winning streak, he has a .966 save percentage, back-to-back 30 save games against BU Friday and Harvard on Monday. He's been awesome, not just in terms of statistically, but the eye test as well. And that was a really crucial NPI game for BC, right? BC held at 12, so their ranking didn't change, but they moved closer to that group ahead of them. Just as a way to put it, kind of, if you look at playoffstatus.com, which does a nice job giving you the probability that a team will make the NCAA tournament, before that game, they gave BC a 63% chance. After that game, a 74% chance. So that was the impact of that game.
Yeah, they had a great game, and then we look now to the BU Northeastern matchup, which was the late game that night. Another back and forth game between BU and Northeastern. They've already met 4 times this season. Every game has been really close and kind of going back and forth. All were 1-goal games. 2 needed extra time, and Monday night was no different. Northeastern led twice, BU countered twice, and the game eventually went to overtime. And that's kind of where the real drama started. Lawton Zacher ends up getting injured on a Cole Eiserman net drive, and Zacher takes a sec to shake off. He gets looked at, and he ends up deciding to stay in the net despite being a little bit shaken up. So he stays in to finish out overtime, and then BU thinks they win it. Ryder Ritchie scores, but it gets called back, a penalty on Gavin McCarthy. So they end up having to go on a 4-on-3 penalty kill for the final 34 seconds. They end up killing that off. They force a shootout, and this shootout was also back and forth. Jack Harvey scores for BU. Then Dylan Ritzkovian scores for Northeastern. And Jay Pandolfo then asked Cole Hudson if he wanted to go as the third skater in this shootout for Boston University. He nodded his head yes, and he scored the shootout winner. And Jay Pandolfo said, "We pretty much had peak Cole Hudson today, and it's not surprising. Lane Hudson and Quinn Hudson also had some really big moments for us, and Cole did it for us tonight." And Pandolfo also said, "Obviously, it's been a bit of a struggle for us recently, but this was a huge win, and he's hoping this will give BU some momentum heading into another matchup against Boston College and into their weekend game against Maine on Friday, 7 p.m. That is a Nesson game, just one game this weekend before they play the Beanpot Championship game, 7:30 in the 300th battle of Com Ave against BC.
Yeah, how fitting that that's going to be the 300th all-time meeting between these teams. It's kind of crazy. BC's now won 7 of the last 9 games against BU, but the 2 that BU have won in the Beanpot, including last year's final. So a little revenge on the mind in terms of the Eagles there. I thought, you go back to Friday's game, I thought that first period may have been one of BU's best periods of the year. They put a ton of shots on goal. They really, kind of did what the game plan was. Like, stop being a possession team, just get the puck on net. They did that. Clinching was just awesome in that first period. So then Jay Pandolfo said, we just didn't really quite sustain the game plan. Can they do that on Monday? Their shots are up. That's what he was looking for. But can they sustain it? That'll be the question for BU. After coming off a win against Northeastern, we'll talk more about Northeastern later in the show. They have a big game with UConn this weekend before they play Harvard in the third place game on Monday. And as a reminder, now that third place game is streamed once again, as it has been the last couple of years. You can see that right here on Nesson Nation. That's a 4:30 start on Monday for Northeastern and Harvard. Well, we have a lot of exciting stuff going on around Hockey East, not just the Beanpot. One of the big events of the year on Saturday is Pack the Gut as UVM plays host to Northeastern. We'll talk with UVM head coach Jim Plumer about that on the other side here on This Week in Hockey East.
Welcome back to This Week in Hockey East. Well, UVM gets to host their annual Pack the Gut game on Saturday evening against Northeastern, and we're joined by UVM women's head coach Jim Plumer. Our interview is presented by Boston Harbor Hotel. Plan your getaway today at bostonharborhotel.com and experience Boston's best waterfront views. Jim, thank you for joining us today. Want to start out with something that I noticed 2 weeks ago when you were in Boston playing Boston University, and what we've been tracking, just a really strong month of January for your line of Stella Retram, Lauren O'Hara, and Kaylee Lewis, all juniors making a huge impact for you guys recently.
Yeah, really happy with the way that line has come together. There's 2 transfers on that line, and I think we had an idea that we wanted Stella and Lauren to play together because they had a little bit of a history of some summer hockey and some hockey growing up together in Minnesota. And it took the better part of the first semester. They had some bright spots, but since we've come back from the new year, they've been really magic out there. You got really hardworking 3 hardworking players with skill, and they're really enjoying playing together. And it's been fun to watch them succeed.
Can you talk a little bit more about Stella Retram as well? She ends up getting named the Hockey East Player of the Month just for the production that she's had. Can you just tell us what's impressive about her and maybe her progress this season?
Yeah, I mean, we we wanted her here because we thought she could score goals. She had some proven success at Penn State. In fact, she scored more goals than anyone on our team had last year. So we were hopeful that that was going to translate here. I think the pleasant surprise for her, and this doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, is her defensive game is really strong. Like, she's become a key penalty killer for us, and I mean, she did have a shorthanded point the other day. So I guess that does show up on the score sheet occasionally, but plays hard both ways. Really has impressed me with her 200-foot game, and she has a nose for the net. And Bridgette, I know you did those 2 games at BU a couple weeks ago. Like the second game, the game winner, just kind of a loose puck thrown towards the net that she anticipates and is able to catch the goalie unaware. Like, I think those are things that are hard to teach someone. We spend a lot of time with skills and working on finishing, and then there's people who just see plays develop, and she does have the skill to be able to finish in the more classic way, but also some grindy goals around the net that you need. It's hard to score goals at this level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Coach, let's talk about Josie Hemp a little bit. Speaking of another transfer coming in from Minnesota, probably one of the more underrated defenders in the league. What kind of influence has she had on the group this year?
Yeah, she definitely is. And, we started to see it last year, right when she got here. She played on our top pairing, and it really kind of, at the end of the season, had really risen in most of the categories that we value. The interesting thing was she just didn't get on the score sheet that much last year. And so she's really kind of sneaky in that she's physical and she's really good defensively. And now we've seen it in practice for 2 years. I was kind of hoping that she'd be able to start putting some pucks in the net, and I think she's got 5 goals for us this year, including a big one that tied the game late on Saturday against Providence. So, power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5. She's seeing the most minutes of any of our defensemen, and probably, like I said, maybe the underrated part of her game is defensive. She's very, very hard to beat one-on-one.
And Julia Mesbled for you guys going to the Olympics to play for her home country of France. First of all, I know that she had a flight out during that storm. Did she make it out on time?
Yeah, she did that. The funny thing about that whole weekend was that she and the Welkies were both supposed to fly out on that Sunday night, and with the big storm coming, all 3 of them moved their flight to 8:40 on Saturday night. They were all on the same flight that was going through Munich, and we gave Julia the option to play a couple periods and then head off to the airport. Our game was at 4, and she did that. The Welkies didn't play. I'm sure that was to our advantage.
Yeah, and so she's a top 6 player for you. How long will you be without her, and what will the group miss about her during those games?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how far they go. Obviously, they're an underdog there. So if they don't make the quarterfinals, we could see her back late next week. Um, I don't think we play at Maine on Friday of next week. She certainly wouldn't be back for that, but I think it's conceivable that she could be back in Burlington by then and maybe have a couple days to get ready. We play on Sunday the following weekend. She's I think the bittersweet thing about her getting this Olympic opportunity, which is obviously phenomenal for her, is this is by far the best year she's had for us. She's got 9 goals. She's a dynamic playmaker, something that, quite honestly, I expected right from the get-go, and for a variety of reasons, including a torn ACL her freshman year that impacted half of that season and probably most of the next season. It took her a while to sort of get comfortable enough and develop and have the confidence to be able to play at this level. But I think the thing that we miss the most is she's a dynamic playmaker down low. She's slippery, hard to get her pinned low in the offensive zone, she's got good chemistry with Rosie Brochu and Ona Havana, which we saw at the end of last season, and they've kept it going. So. Listen, it's an incredible opportunity for her to get to play in the Olympics, but we sure are missing her right now.
Coach, before we let you go, we want to talk a little bit about this Saturday and the annual Pack the Gut. I'm sure many folks know about it. Maybe for the folks who don't, can you tell us a little bit about the tradition of it, what you guys are trying to accomplish in terms of the record, and just how it's become really an important part of your team and your program?
Yeah, it is. It started in the fall of 2013 was our first time. We had a rising senior who had the idea in the summer of before her senior year, before the 2013-14 season, and she originally conceived it as a way to get fans here, but also to as a fundraiser for Meals on Wheels, which was something that she had experience with. And so it started out in that dual capacity. And I think that first year we may have set the Hockey East attendance record, and we've set it a number of times during this event. I know that I think BU, I think there's some teams, Northeastern at their last game at Matthews had like 3,000 fans or more. So I know it might not be even available for us to break, but we had over 2,000 that first game, and we've had a number of times that we've broken it with our high right now is 2705. But her real idea was, at those times, like our men's team was selling out every game. There was waiting lists for season tickets for the men's hockey, and I think all of sort of in-person sports is down a little bit nowadays, but just for our players to feel the energy of the crowd and to have that experience in playing in front of a big crowd. We've been able to get big crowds to some of our playoff games over the years, and we even had a classroom game earlier this year that happened at 11 in the morning where we had, I think, 1,400 school kids screaming, and even that, the energy in the building, it definitely feeds our players. So we're hoping that with our good run that we had prior to last weekend, that we've built some awareness in the community. This community really supports UVM athletics. We don't have pro sports here in Burlington. I think with some of the things that have happened in the last few years, like our men's soccer team winning the national championship and now selling out every home game, it's pretty fun for that to come to women's hockey as well.
Well, we hope you enjoy that. Good luck with the Pack the Gut event. Thank you to UVM head coach Jim Plumer. When we come back, we'll go around the men's side of Hockey East coming up next. Welcome back to This Week in Hockey East. It's time to go around the men's side of Hockey East, and we'll start with a matchup between UMass and UMass Lowell. They meet again this weekend after a crazy week last week, playing 2 games already against each other before they come out for another one this weekend. We talked about how good UMass has been defensively and their goaltending. Well, this was a different style of game. It was a high-scoring game. It ends up being 6-4, a UMass win, and part of that thanks to a hat trick by Jack Musa. But Lowell scored as well 4 times. We talked about it. 2 goals in the third, and then UMass scoring late. Cam Dunn getting the game winner. Really a nice win for a shorthanded UMass team that's had some key injuries in this middle part of the season. And for Lowell, it's kind of crazy. They get 9 goals between the 2 games, but they're still on the wrong side of both of them. To UMass able to take those games. 7 straight wins for them, as low as 42nd. On January 19th. Now they've moved their way up to 18th this week in the NPI. So incredible to be back in the picture for them. I mean, these 2 games are huge, and another one coming up.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy to win like 9, 10, 11 in a row, but UMass is right there. If they can win some of these games, they have a very good chance of getting themselves not just in the tournament picture, but maybe in the tournament. Another important one, UConn for 1 game will go to Northeastern. That'll be at Bentley this weekend for that game. UConn was off last weekend, off of their big win in CT Ice just a couple of games ago. UConn's right there at 3rd in the hockey standings entering this weekend. And I think the question is UConn going to jump up into that group with Providence and Boston College? They're 3 back of BC. They're 5 back of Providence. Or are they going to be in that group where if you look at 3 through 8 right now are only separated by 6 points? So is it a top trio? Or is it a group at, kind of 3 for 8? Where does UConn fit in? I think that's what we're going to figure out over the next couple of weeks. They get Northeastern today. The other side of it here for UConn, they're right on the NPI bubble. They've literally been flipping the last couple of days with Augustana. When Lowell had lost, they went down. Then when Merrimack won on Tuesday, they went back up. I mean, it's that close between those 2 teams. Right now, playoffstatus.com puts their odds at 42% to make the NCAA tournament this morning. So they're right there, but they got to win these games and they got to take care of business. So it'll be an interesting matchup with Northeastern, a team that UConn beat twice earlier this year. Lawton Zacher, by the way, for Northeastern, was great in that Beanpot game. If you look at some of the advanced numbers, again, just ridiculous performance in a game that they couldn't end up getting.
Hopefully, Eric, hopefully he's healthy, right? That's something that we don't know yet. And if he's healthy, and good to go, that'll be something to watch out for too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We'll wrap things up on the women's side when we come back.
It's time to go around the women's side of Hockey East, presented by Boston Children's Hospital, where the world comes for answers. We want to talk about the race in the middle, but first, Eric, there's a clinching situation this week at the top of the Hockey East standings.
Yeah, Northeastern's magic number is just 6 entering this week, folks. So if they get all 6 points this weekend, or UConn were to lose somewhere, Northeastern will have clinched the regular season title the next time we talk to you, still with a couple of weeks to go. So that's just shows how good they've been this year. But I think it's interesting in that 5 to 8 range in the standings entering this week, there's not a lot of separation there. Somebody's going to emerge and not have to play an opening round game, right? Who are those teams? I think we're going to find out. One key matchup, Maine at BU on Saturday. We'll have that game for you here on Nesson. Maine played 2 really high-scoring competitive games against Boston College last weekend, a 4-3 win on Friday. Then they fell in overtime on Sunday. Ava Stevenson had a great weekend. She's our Jersey Mike's, a sub-above player of the week. She scored in both games. She had a 3-point game on Sunday, 7 shots overall for the weekend. So, she's just really been one of a few players who've been excellent for Maine recently.
Yeah, another has been Mackenzie Podwell. She's been great. Also a 4-point weekend for her, 4 goals and 7 points over the last 7 games. They're taking on a BU team that just swept Merrimack last weekend, so they're coming in with a little bit of confidence as well. They play UVM on Thursday. Maine will be at Northeastern on Thursday as well.
There's a couple of these split weekends, so it makes it a little bit trickier to figure out. UVM's right in that mix of 5 through 8. We just talked to Jim Plumer. Then New Hampshire, too, coming off another nice, solid weekend against UConn. They lose 1-0 Friday, but 3-2 overtime win on Saturday. 49 saves for Noemi Martinez. UNH has Merrimack Friday and then a game at Holy Cross on Saturday. So interesting stuff all around. We're getting to that time where, the hockey's race really heats up. The NPI race really heats up. One thing, if you're really tracking it, you should look at the Augustana Michigan State series this weekend on the men's side, because that might determine where UConn finds itself at the end of this weekend. All these things interconnect, right? We're going to start looking at the bubble on both sides quite a bit over the next couple of weeks. So it should be a lot of fun. And then, of course, we have the 300th meeting of the Battle of ComAv and the Beanpot final on Monday night. So there's a lot of really good stuff going on this time of year. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. And that's why, you look at this group of 5 through 8 on the women's side, Bridgette, not a couple of teams can get out, right? And it might be decided right now who are the teams that are going to jump out of that mix versus who will play an opening round game. We can't wait to see what happens. Should be a lot of fun this week. Thanks so much for joining us, folks, for This Week in Hockey East.